So going on with what happened in the dramatization, did you cringe as soon as the TA said, "Okay, ladies in the class"?
Yeah, I did. I have to say. I mean, that was, on one hand, it sounds heavy-handed, but I've had those experiences, so I know that kind of thing happens. So, yeah, highlighting the women as women, drawing attention to their gender in front of everyone, yeah, that's a awkward moment.
And it plays back into stereotype threat, like what we were talking about, right?
Absolutely. Another chance to activate stereotype threat. Plus, it's unhelpfully stereotypical, right? So surely everyone who has a non-black or a non-blue pen could benefit from hearing it, right? Whether or not they're female. And for example, people might have pencils. So if you're using gender or race or any other social category to call out people, just leave it alone. Like, don't even go there. That's not to say that people have to leave those parts of themselves at the door, but it shouldn't be the defining characteristic of the relationship between the instructor and the student.
Exactly. I think he probably could have just said, my policy is only use blue or black pens or pencils, and just left it at that. There was no need to specifically mention the women in the class or anything like that.
That's right.
Even if it's just for like 2 seconds, like that one was. Like, it wasn't, something extended.
Absolutely. They don't need to be long. I actually remember being in a class and the instructor calling me dear. So it was, it was not even a second, right? I had made some kind of question or some kind of comment, and he called me dear. And that's all I could think about the entire rest of the class, was how he called me dear. How dare he? How dare he presume that he had the right to call me that? And then in front of everyone else, I was incensed, and I heard nothing else of the class except for that. So, that's not what education's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be them learning physics. So, dropping all of that peripheral extraneous junk that in fact has nothing to do with the class, and focusing everyone's attention on physics.
So now that we talk about James, when I was coming up with the idea for that interaction, that was largely based on my personal experience as an African American, and moments where I've seen African Americans or other underrepresented minorities put pressure on other people also in the minority group, and pressure to perform well, and to go against whatever the stereotype is, to show people that this is just a stereotype. Not everyone in this group is like this, and you work extra hard to show people that you're not in that box that the stereotype has tried to put them in. As a woman, have you ever had any similar interaction where a woman was putting pressure on you or on someone else that was also a woman?
Sure, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but I want to address the race thing for a second. So I'm not just a woman, I'm a white woman, right? So as a white person, I know that I've learned to think that my race is background, that it's default, and that what I have I've earned through my own merit. But I also know that neither of these things are actually true or right. One of my participants in some of my research, he's a black man that I met at the National Society of Black Engineers. He told me about these kinds of interactions that you're describing, and he called them sunning, and emphasized how they actually mattered to him personally in order to amp up his game. So maybe Ernest does want to warn James, but he just said to everyone that they could use his pens, right? And maybe James had bought a pencil. So there's this presumption that Ernest is putting on James, that James is unprepared. And that may have racial relations at heart, even though Ernest is also black. So that sort of speaks to the whole, we do things to ourselves, as it were. We do things to our own groups. So because of my white privilege, I'm not expected to represent my racial group, and so I don't have to fear that my unpreparedness in coming to class is going to poorly represent my racial group. So my unpreparedness, I presume, because of white privilege, is a result of my own actions, and I know that my colleagues of color are not granted this same privilege, so I want to acknowledge that. However, I know that the research on gender indicates that both women and men activate implicit biases against women that both women and men, as groups, hold low expectations of against women, or hold up low expectations of women, or judge other women unfairly. And this is because we're not talking about sexism and racism as individual acts of meanness. This is because these things happen in the context of a set of social relations that we as groups hold and activate and turn into structural inequality. So absolutely, I've had the situation where other women have said, make sure that you do whatever it is, presuming that I might not, out of fear for being judged stereotypically by the majority group. So we're seeing really sort of powerful social relations activated here in the interaction between James and Ernest.
Great. Yeah. I mean, just because you're a member of a minority group doesn't exclude you from being insensitive from diversity with diversity. And it doesn't exclude you from doing things that, make the classroom feel less inclusive, or to put pressure on other minorities to perform a certain way. And so I really want to make the point that this is something that everyone has to be on guard for and aware of. And we all make careless remarks from time to time, or say a comment that's less inclusive. But the goal is to be, aware of it and to consciously strive to use language that makes everyone feel like you said, that they have the opportunity to learn here, and that this is about learning and not being judged or put into a particular box.
Plus, once you make those mistakes, all of us are going to make mistakes. And once you make those mistakes, to own them and apologize for them. It's not irrecoverable. You don't sort of damage the class irrecoverably. You can name what you did and describe why it was a mistake, why you shouldn't have said it, and apologize for it. That's totally acceptable to do. Don't try and paper over it once you do make mistakes, as we all do, because we're situated in a really complex set of social relations about where particularly gender and race structure our lived experiences. So they're going to come out, and then we can own them.
Yeah, and so now that you're talking about owning them, that also reminds me, another thing that I'm hoping is that, if someone who participates in this module, becomes more aware and ultimately more receptive to these kind of things, and if it's like, for example, you yourself, went up to that professor later and said, when you said dear, that really bothered me, instead of being someone who just laughs that off or just goes, well, that's that student's problem, that's their issue, they need to deal with that, going, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that would make you feel that way, and I will work hard in the future, to not say anything like that again, because clearly, like you said, that was all you could think about for the rest of the class. You didn't learn whatever it was you were supposed to learn in that class, because this deer was just in your mind, and so you can say, I don't want that to happen. I'm an educator. I want you to be focused on what I'm teaching you, and not on the words that I use to refer to you.
Right.